In this assignment, we're being asked to look at the aspects of identity and culture that feel most relevant to me on the wheel and my sense of self. The three that I picked were not really difficult to pick, and they really are all three related. Um, One is gender, the second is sexual orientation, and the third is family history. And the other question is which top three shape your leadership identity? And I would just answer again the same. I think those three aspects have driven so much of who I am um, for my life and continue to shape who I am and which includes how I am as a leader. They've all three been very impactful. So there really isn't any difference between those, and in fact, it's the opposite. Those three aspects really are intertwined. Um, and um, and in the next question, we're asked, can you identify any differences in how you've thought and felt about any of these identities over the course of my adolescence and adulthood? That I can explain how these three intertwine. I grew up the youngest in a family of seven. I had six older sisters growing up in the 70s during a time of in the media and in the culture. It was a time of women's liberation and growing up with this understanding that uh, in the culture, males had the advantage and women were disadvantaged. And while, of course, as an adult, I understand that now, back then I didn't feel that way. I felt like girls or women had the advantages because I felt like growing up a boy during that time and in that family situation was kind of a disadvantage. I felt boys had it rougher, that we had to worry about getting in fights at school. And it seemed like my sisters had a more stress free life than I did. Now, I know now that that's not true, but it seemed that way to me as a young boy. Um, so that is also very tied into the family history. The fact that I had the older sisters and I had a father that was very domineering and very critical, and that's been very present with me my whole life, dealing with the criticalness of my father in the midst of all that. And then you throw on top of that sexual orientation issues. Now, as a child growing up in the 70s, honestly, I didn't even know there was different sexual orientations. I really didn't see myself within that context. Um, I wasn't really aware of any gay people. In fact, the word gay wasn't really even in uh, the vocabulary of where I grew up. And so I was really oblivious to sexual orientation being such a key part of who I was. I think part of growing up closeted gay at that time meant um, really putting those thoughts and feelings way in the back of your mind and kind of putting it under lock and key um, and ignoring it. And so it really wasn't until later in life that I realized how much uh, sexual orientation had such an important role in my development and my identity. Um, So when I look at the question, can I describe how my thoughts and feelings about my identities are different now than they used to be at an earlier time in my life? Um, that's how I can really look at the fact that such a major part of my development was hidden or locked away. And so now I have to almost re look at my life and put the pieces together of my life and my identity and including my leadership style, kind of like put it back together retrospectively, because now I know I was a gay little boy. I was a gay adolescent, and that part of me was not allowed to come out, and I repressed that part of me. And so I have a lot of regret about that, and probably even sadness about that. And yet, I also feel fortunate that, in spite of that, I've been able to develop some skills and knowledge in my field, and possibly have been able to use some of that to have empathy for um, children as a teacher and other adults with I work with as a leader. So I think it all is in a mixed bag there. I think my family history and my gender uh, influences have had a big impact on me, and yet I also feel like this coming out gay later in life has really opened up an opportunity for me to be more my true self and maybe be more vulnerable with people um, as as a leader. And I think that's the one key difference since I've come out, is that I think I've allowed myself to be more vulnerable with the people I work with, and I think less um, trying to be somebody I'm not, frankly. And maybe there was a little bit more pretending going on before. Um, but again, that's mixed with the idea that from my personal life, I was able to come out of all of that with three wonderful children, and and so it really is a total mixed blessing. Um, but so those are the three aspects that have had the most impact on me